Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. Today we have the new season, which is always exciting for me. I love whenever there's a new card released, when everyone is pushing for infinite again, and so they're all trying to gain cubes, and so it gets really competitive really quickly. And so I always love jumping in and trying to build a deck with the new card, and this month is going to be no different. But before I do that, I want to break down my top 5 deck recommendations to try on day 1 with Black Panther, no matter what pool you're in. And so before we jump into the decks, I want to bring up 5 cards that are going to be key or pivotal, and you're going to see them in pretty much any deck that is running Black Panther. And so those cards are going to be Forge, Okoye, Nakia, and those are the pool 1 and pool 2 cards that you'll see. As you get into pool 3, things get a little bit crazier or spicier. In pool 3, you can expect to see Wong and Arnold Zola as ways to elevate Black Panther's power even further. And so let's jump over into the deck builds. The first one is going to be a pool 1 exclusive build. As you progress into pool 2, pool 3, it's going to be a lot less impactful, but if you are in pool 1 and you want to try out Black Panther, then you can absolutely try this one out. Now, I am brewing these just a little bit before the card is released, and so anywhere that you see Gamora in these decks, just picture Black Panther. And so this deck uses the only pool 1 resource that can be used to elevate your Black Panther's power. And so whenever Black Panther is played, it is going to essentially double the power that was given by Forge. Since it's going to double its overall power, Black Panther will absorb that buff before his own reveal triggers, and so he's going to get an extra +4 power from using the Forge just before dropping Black Panther. Now, with Forge and having Forge in the list, it doesn't feel okay to just have one target, because we're not always going to draw into Black Panther. We're not always going to want to drop Black Panther. And so with this, we added in Mr. Sinister as well. Mr. Sinister is going to take the buff from Forge, it's going to apply it to Mr. Sinister, and then as a result, it will apply it directly to his clone as well. And so they'll both be 4 power, so it's essentially getting the same upside out of the Forge bonus as our Black Panther would, just at a cheaper cost. And then the rest of the deck is a pretty standard Odin on reveal. So we have some low cost cards to tempo in with our Angela. We have Ironheart and Wolfsbane to push some mid-range power. We have Jessica Jones to drop in a lane as a kind of a capstone before pushing into our final win condition in one of the other lanes with either a White Tiger or a Black Panther, and then finally capped off with an Odin. And so the overall play of this deck is pretty straightforward, but a lot of times in this list, Black Panther is going to be a little bit lackluster. He'll get stronger as you get into pools 2 and pools 3, but he can be played. He is going to be a decently powered card, but I think the majority of the time, Gamora is just going to edge out a little bit compared to him, at least in pool 1. And then next we have the pool 2 build for Black Panther. Now, as you enter pool 2, Killmonger is going to get introduced into the game, and so 1-cost cards become a liability. They become a way to really easily get a win stolen out from under your nose. You're going to start losing some bigger games when the opponent drops a Killmonger that you weren't anticipating. And so if you can't beat them, we're just going to lean in and join them. And so we're going to run Killmonger in this list. The only 1-cost card that we're going to run is Nova. If we get Killmonger and no Nova, a lot of times that can counter the opponent's play. But if we get both, then that's going to help us elevate the power level of all of our cards. So that includes our Mr. Sinister, Sinister Clone, anything else that we throw onto the board to find that final win condition when we need it. And then the rest of the deck is going to run the Forge, Mr. Sinister, and Black Panther combo. And if you didn't watch the pool 2 build, wherever you see Gamora, just picture Black Panther. I'm brewing these early before the card is officially released, just a little bit before it's released. And so where you see Gamora, just picture Black Panther. And then we have Okoye, who will buff all of the cards in our deck. If we can drop her before we draw into Black Panther, perfect. We're going to get +2 power on our Black Panther as a result, and then we can combo that with the Forge as well. Now, you'll notice that I don't have Nakia in this list. She's just a little bit too clunky. She's a little bit too hard to consistently trigger. And so we ended up going with a little bit more consistent play pattern instead. So the rest of the deck list, besides your Black Panther, is going to be kind of a mid-range, early tempo into a little bit of control aspect with our Storm and Jessica Jones. If we can lock down one of the lanes, then we can really lean into that Black Panther. If not, sometimes we need to push power wide with our White Tiger and then the re-trigger with Odin. And then we also have Chavez in the list as a way to make our draws a little bit more consistent. So if we can draw into our Storm a little bit earlier, a little bit more often, that is going to benefit us more than drawing it in on 6 when it's a lot less impactful. Whenever we have our potential play lines already planned out, a lot of times we want to draw into those early so that we can plan and drop accordingly. Okay, so for our first pool 3 build, anywhere you see Gamora, just picture Black Panther right now. But this list is a wide Wong deck. So it is looking at some early game tempo, trying to lock down potentially a location with Storm. But if we have this playline instead in our starting hand, we can do something like dropping Ironheart onto an empty board. We can drop Wong into a White Tiger into an Odin to re-trigger White Tiger several more times, and we'll trigger Ironheart several more times as well. Or if we draw into the early game pressure, we can do the early game and then the Storm. We can then follow that up with a Wong. If we are able to lock down the Storm location, we can do Wong, Black Panther, and then we can re-trigger that again with Odin. Or a little bit different play path, we could do Wong into Black Panther into Arnim Zola to push that Black Panther into those other lanes. His own reveal will re-trigger once he is resummoned into those other lanes. And so if it was in a Wong lane, this can escalate pretty quickly because Arnim Zola is going to trigger twice. And so it could potentially trigger and destroy your Wong first and set it up for another double Black Panther, which would be a 64 power Black Panther in those other lanes, which is absolutely insane if you draw into that play line. But otherwise, if you don't, we have the ability to go wide pretty easily with our White Tiger and our Dr. Doom, or our White Tiger and Odin. All right, and then the next deck that we have is a Lockjaw Thor rotation deck. And so with this deck list, we have a couple of different play paths, and that leads to a little bit more consistency. Some games we're not going to want to drop Lockjaw on the board if we have Thor in hand. So if we have Thor and Wong in our starting hand, then we can curve into Thor on 3, Wong on 4. Then we can decide whether we want to drop a Black Panther, which I know it says Gamora, just picture Black Panther, we're brewing these early. We can either do a Black Panther or a Jane Foster if we want to guarantee we draw into our Mjolnir. If we've already drawn into our Mjolnir, then Thor is going to be our win condition in one of the lanes. We can then play Black Panther onto the Wong lane on 5, and then drop our Mjolnir and an Odin to re-trigger Mjolnir 6 times and to re-trigger Black Panther 4 more times, making him an insane amount of power. And we have 2 really, really big lanes that are going to be hard to compete with if they don't have a Shang-Chi or something to mitigate that power. And then if we don't draw into that play line, we can always use Lockjaw to start rotating some of our cards to give ourselves a little bit more consistency. Rotating a Dr. Doom on 6 is always pretty good. We're going to get power into those other lanes, and then we rotate into another card that could potentially be a bigger impact than the 5 power of Dr. Doom. We have Gambit that's going to be great to be dropped into the Wong lane, especially if we re-trigger it with Odin, or if it's cycled into on that last turn. Even better, we can potentially destroy some of the opponent's key cards that they might have. This deck just offers a lot of flexibility, a lot of good rotation tools, but that's not our only win condition. And so this one should be a pretty solid build to kind of lean in on. And this list also has the Ironheart into an empty lane on 3, into a Wong on 4, into a Black Panther or Jane Foster on 5, into an Odin, which would re-trigger the Ironheart several times over. We have Wasp in another lane that could be the benefactor of that Ironheart bonus, and just a lot of upside from the Wong interaction in this list, which kind of pushes it over the top in that power level and that power potential. And then next up, we have the list that I am the most excited to try out. It is an Electro ramp deck, but it has a couple of different play paths to find that win condition. So where you see Gamora, just picture Black Panther. I'm brewing this early, but Electro will give us an extra energy, and so that will allow us to, on turn 4, either drop a Devil Dino, or a Leech, or a Black Panther, maybe even a White Tiger. It just gives us some flexibility in that play line. And then we could always go with an Arnim Zola. Afterwards, we could go with a Wong into Arnim Zola. We have a lot of potential play paths. We could do the Black Panther into Arnim Zola, into an Odin in the Arnim Zola lane, which would allow our Odin to be duplicated and be 16 power on that final turn. We just have a lot of flexibility in our play lines with this list. Another potential play line, if we don't draw Electro or we don't draw into those cards, we can do Thor on 3, Wong on 4. If we draw into our Mjolnir by the last turn, then that's perfect. If not, then we can look for a potential win condition elsewhere. We can do Wong into a Black Panther, into an Arnim Zola for a potential 64 power trigger in those 2 lanes. Just a lot of flexibility here. We can also, by default, go into the wide Wong kind of combo of the White Tiger into the Wong lane, into the Odin, which is going to trigger that White Tiger 6 total times, pushing tokens onto the board as a result. And just so much flexibility with this list that if it doesn't get hard countered with something like Lockdown or a Cosmo to stop those one reveals from happening, then we should be able to outpower the opponent no matter what order we draw our cards in. But those are my top 5 deck recommendations to try out with Black Panther. I'm going to be brewing some more. I'm going to have a video of Pool 3 gameplay out relatively shortly after this video, so if you've made it this far, make sure to check that out. And then if you want to watch some live footage, I'm going to be live on Twitch a little bit later today as well, so make sure to jump over and follow us on twitch.tv/TLSGsnap. The link will be in the description. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. As always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.